you really have to make sure that the vibe is working for that artist. Make them unique, make them special. In many cases, the thing that makes the artist special is their voice. You know, you don't need to throw in a bunch of stuff to make the music special. You just let the artist be the artist.
Yeah.
And that's a trap that I get caught in all the time as a producer.
You're listening to For the Record, conversations about music, mixing, and the creative industry. Our guest today is Nathaniel Dulski. Nathaniel is a producer and mix engineer from the Chicago suburbs. He has worked in a collection of studios around his hometown.
Hello, Nathaniel. How's it going?
Hi, Jeremiah. It's good. It's going good.
I am glad that you're here.
I'm glad I'm here too. It's been like 2 months, 3 months since I've been here. So
Truthfully, yeah, I mean, we haven't gotten to hang out as much as I wish we could. So, Nathaniel, we go not super far back, but we go a ways back. But the people listening have not gotten to know you the way I have.
They have not gone back.
No, they've not gone back. And so I'd love for you to just tell a little bit about who you are and the things that you enjoy to do.
Yeah, okay. Well, who I am. So I'm a mixing engineer / producer that's pretty much grown up in this area for my entire life in the Chicagoland area. And I started music when I was pretty young. I started on like guitar, and I really enjoyed that. And then I wanted to create my own music. So naturally, you know, you find out about digital audio workstations and all of that sort of stuff and microphones. And that propelled me into my high school career, my college career, which was all music-based. Got a degree in music business, which I have not used to this point. But, you know, you do what you got to do. And the music business degree at my college just so happened to also be the one with the producer track. So that's what I did. Learned how to mix. Did front of house for a while at quite a few churches in the area. And now I'm an independent contractor in the studio and in live situations for religious, non-religious, and studio events.
Right. So you just do all the things.
I try to do all the things, yes.
Yeah.
And now I work full time at a church, managing the production equipment as their systems engineer. So I've moved slightly away from music in the past few months, but it's still something that I do as a hobby and as a passion, and something that I still try to find time for my clients for, you know, on my days off.
And I think that is something that a lot of musicians have to do, right? Music is their passion, it's what they want to do, and yet the reality is it's hard to sustain your life while doing that, and so usually it has to be a side gig. I think that's a common thing.
Yeah, I think that if I had the choice to like, if I knew that I was going to have stability in this sort of role, I'd love to pursue it. But yeah, I think you're right. Like, for many people, it's definitely just something that we get to do as a fun hobby or have a little side job, and I think that's totally fine.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how you got into like the music industry in general, but I'd love to hear just a little more specifics on like that transition, especially in high school, where you made that switch from this is something I enjoy doing on the side to this is something I want to like move my life towards and go in that direction.
Yeah. So like I was a heavy metal kid. Like I just loved metal, and so I started out as a player before I, you know, moved on to the technical side. And so as an electric guitar player, like I loved creating, you know, awesome tones. I loved copying my favorite bands, but there was kind of a point where that gets boring, especially since I didn't have a whole lot of musical friends growing up. it's not the funnest thing ever to play by yourself over and
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
So that is what kind of turned into like, oh, I need to figure out how to record myself, because if I don't learn to record myself, I'm just going to burn out. And so making music was the next logical progression for me. And so my sister was actually the first person to get a DAW, or a digital audio workstation, because she was doing animation. And then I stole it from her because she wasn't using it, because she gave up on that for a little while. And now she's back into animation. But I took over the DAW. And so I wrote heavy metal in an EDM producer DAW, which was FL Studio, which was super fun and not intuitive at all. But
Did you like ever try to put the EDM elements into the heavy metal? Because that would be kind of dope.
Yeah, so there was my first ever record that never made it on a Spotify or, any streaming platforms, was called Capsule. Capsul, I believe. And that is on Bandcamp. That was kind of like, it was kind of like a heavy metal that didn't have vocals, but it was just like an amalgamation of just like all the random stuff that I thought of. And at the time I was listening to like Chan, which is like a super technical guitar band. And I was listening to like Animals as Leaders and all these like crazy heavy metal bands that did all this weird techno stuff in the middle of their metal.
Yeah.
And so I have elements of that in there. Once I started producing my own metal, I kind of did away with that. I wanted to just have something simple, which was, like, I wanted to do like 2 guitars panned, a bass, vocals, and then like filler, lead electric, lead piano, stuff like that. And so that's kind of what my music now reflects. Is it's very sort of straightforward in nature. The production is more simple, but I try and just let the instruments that are playing just shine, rather than filling it up with random stuff.
Yeah, that's cool. I feel like when I look back on the music that that I first produced when I was learning, I had this misconception about what I had to do to produce music, and it was this like more is better, right? And it was like, if having 2 guitars is this awesome, then having 4 guitars is this awesome. And it was kind of just this, let's just add it in. It's gonna make it like big and then bigger.
Right.
And like looking back, I'm like, this was just chaos. Like this isn't good. And learning how to make that switch where a mix is like only at 100%. And so whatever you do and whatever instruments you add take up a chunk of that percentage.
Right.
It's not like I'm gonna add this and add this and add this, because each contribution gets that much smaller in that mix.
Right.
Like that was a
Totally.
big lesson for me to learn.
Yeah, totally. One of the most difficult things that I've found, especially in recent days, because I've been producing a lot of singer-songwriters, is like when you have a giant like heavy metal mix or a giant EDM mix, there's so many elements. You can kind of fudge some of the elements, and they don't have to sound incredible for them to work in the mix. But when it's an acoustic guitar and a vocal, you have to get both of those you have to do the job right, or else you're gonna hear that reflected in the music, and it's gonna suffer because of that.
Yeah.
So like,
It's almost like the bigger mixes are easier.
yeah, bigger, yeah, because at that point, like, not to dumb it down or anything, but it's like high pass everything so that things aren't getting in the way of the bass and the
Right.
kick drum, and then make sure that it's not making your ears bleed. Like that's
Right.
that's about it.
Right.
And make sure it's not mono, unless you're into that sort of thing. But like, that's it. So it's much simpler to do a large mix to make it sound big, when you've got these massive instruments like super distorted electric guitars and a massive kick drum. It's not super easy to make a mix sound full or full and warm, and more importantly to me nowadays is dynamic and spacious when it's just a very small amount of instruments.
Yeah.
Also in production world, like the more sparse instrumentation is, the more intentional it has to be.
Yeah.
Like if you have a singer-songwriter and an acoustic guitar, then inputting a piano somewhere is going to make a way larger difference than if you've got a full rock band and, you know, a piano starts playing halfway through.
Right.
It adds very little to the dynamic of that. But when you have such a small amount
Yeah.
of sounds at your disposal, every small thing just
Yeah.
is exponentially adjusts the character of the entire song.
Yeah. I have been really getting into the less is more style of producing and music, probably because most of my clients right now are like singer-songwriters like
Right.
you.
Yep.
And it's like, how can I do something that like create a song that is true to the artist and creating a sound that actually reflects the lyrics and the topic and the tone that they're going for.
Right.
Because a lot of times the singer-songwriters, they don't have an idea of a full production for a song. They just
Totally.
like they have a demo essentially.
Right.
And so you're trying to build something that really reflects that well. But then also like, how can I make something that sounds different and creative, but is like uber intentional with every space, every
Totally.
moment.
Yeah.
And I've learned to like, I hate now like looping something, even if it's just on principle. Like if I programmed like a MIDI key line or something and I'm playing the same thing here, it like always hurts me a little bit to just be like copy paste. Like I'm like, I want to record this. It's just going to be like a little different.
Yeah.
But yeah.
A lot of the stuff that I'd agree with that. I think that copying, pasting, it depends on the genre, of course. Like a big pop record, I heavily enforce copy paste just because
Right.
you want that consistency.
Yeah.
But for something like a small acoustic record, it's like, nope, you're gonna play through the entire song.
Right.
Like, and you're gonna sing the entire song. We're not gonna copy over like sometimes I would copy over the chorus of a song. Like for a vocal, I think that consistency in the vocal is important. It depends on how strong the vocal performance is too.
That's
if
true.
it's like I have to pull teeth to get a single decent chorus out of them.
And a lot of times you're like layering other melodies or vocals
Right.
into the chorus
Yeah,
at different
totally.
times, so you can get away with that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think the less is more approach is really, really crucial, and you see it more and more with large producers or large artists like Lauv and like any person that Phineas really produces. I mean, obviously Billie Eilish is like the queen nowadays. Like she's everywhere. So, but like everything that Phineas does with her is like it's always so sparse. Like even like I was telling you earlier, I have Your Power stuck in my head, and that's literally like 2 acoustic guitars and then like something in the low end that's like a kick drum, but I can't tell what it is because it's so low that it's almost like he just like hit the mic a few times and he was like, let's sample that, and that's what it is.
I've literally done that kind of thing before.
Yeah,
And it works.
And it works. It's
Right.
fine. It's great. But like, yeah, doing that really sparse thing, you notice when new things happen in like any of Lauv's stuff or any of Billy's stuff, and so. It's cool. It's cool to try to replicate that, but it is very difficult.
Oh yeah.
It's very difficult.
And it's funny because I think it's easy to think it's easier, right? You're not recording as many tracks. It's like the songs that you hear that are an acoustic guitar and a vocal, you're like, oh, that was kind of a waste of studio time, right? There's this temptation to think that sometimes you want to pull your hair out, this like the intricacy of how can we make this perfect.
Right.
That's tough. It is.
It's very difficult, and it's more difficult to have a vision going in. Like as a producer, I like it's very difficult for me to start on anything without having like not just a vision of where I want it to go, but like action steps to get there.
Yeah.
Like I've heard demos before, and I say this is where I want to take it, and I have the vision, but I don't have action steps yet, and so the project has actually flubbed because I'm just like I'm in the middle of a production that I had a vision for, but then I didn't take the correct steps to get where I wanted, and so now I'm in this weird in between where it's like this kind of sounds good, but it's not what I was thinking about, but it's not the demo anymore,
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Being
like
a producer is rough.
That's interesting because the importance of planning, right? I have had so many times, and I haven't really thought ahead to plan as much as I probably should.
Sure.
But in these times especially, I had an idea. I heard the demo, and I'm like, this is what we could get it to sound like. Let's do that.
Right.
And because I didn't really flesh it out and plan it properly, I was just like, let's just go at it. And I just tried a couple like MIDI sounds and things like this. And I was like, this is working great. I reached a dead end, and it was like a brick wall dead end.
Yep.
Like
Where you're
halfway through. And I was like, I put hours into this.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like when you just start chucking stuff in, you're like, oh, it could use a little bit of salt. It could use some pepper. It could use some paprika. And then at the end, you've just got like this nasty concoction that you're like, oh, shoot, now I have to like I've restarted projects before, sometimes you've just got to restart. Or, in the case of music, obviously you like I've cut like tons of tracks, you know?
I literally had a song that I'm still working on. It's almost done, but I like cut it all and started over, I think 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
And
totally.
like over the course of like 7 months or something. And I thought like in January was the last time I had like tried to do this again, and I reached a dead end again, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm gonna do with this song.
Yep.
And then I randomly had like a moment of inspiration, and I put like 15 hours over a weekend into this song.
That's what
and
happens, yeah.
got it like 95% done, and I'm like, we've got a song.
Finally,
And
right?
yeah, and the client, like, because she had heard the song as well, like in all of the processes. And I was like, I'm not going to show her anything until I have it like virtually done.
Right.
And then I sent it to her, and like it just blew her away. And I was like, that is cool.
Yeah.
That's how you know that like you're on the right track.
Totally. Yeah. I'm in the middle of producing a song too, and this song has been in the production chain for months now. Like I think we started last summer. So it's been almost a year since we started tracking it, and I've literally spent weeks just spending time on this song.
Yeah.
And I actually had a hard drive crash earlier this year, which kind of sucks because I lost some of my work on it. But like, in a sense, I actually think it was a good thing because I was again getting lost in all of that detail.
Yeah.
It's a very pop heavy, it's a very pop song. It's very sparse in a cool way, but there were just too many elements being added, so I need to strip it back again and go with more consistent elements across the entire piece that give the song a little bit more fluidity. Like right now, it's just like the verse feels different from the chorus, which feels different from verse 2. So I need to string more like sounds together and make it feel more cohesive. So
that's what's interesting with working with independent artists instead of a band. And I don't think I caught on to this at first, but when you're just sitting down and creating a song in a chair at a DAW instead of having a band come in, trying to figure out something that sounds fluid is really hard, because in your mind you're just like, I'm gonna throw this in here in the chorus that wasn't in the verse and hope it works, and then listen back, and it really just feels like a crapshoot as to whether or not it works or not. Whereas like with a band, they've been practicing their songs, they've kind of produced their own sound a lot, and as a producer you're just giving them direction.
Yeah.
And so there's this cohesiveness that usually, not always, but usually just flows through the song.
And the cool thing about a band too is like when you have a band, they have their specific set of sounds, right? Like you have a limited, like you've got guitar sounds, and you've got a bass sound, and you've got drum sound, and you've got keys sounds, and if they have a saxophone player or a trumpet player or whatever, that's in there too. Like you have 4 or 5 sounds. Yeah, that's great. When you're doing EDM music production, you can have an unlimited amount of sounds. I mean, there's sound design where you're taking vocal chops. There's, large pads, drones, analog instruments. Yeah. You can add guitars, all of your standard acoustic instruments. Like, you can do whatever you want. You've got distortion to play with. You've got all sorts of filtering. And that's what I think cripples me a little bit when I approach pop music, is like there is so much choice that it's hard to get that consistency.
Yeah. I think of like photography and like photographers that you go to their Instagram and you see there's really specifically a style that runs through everything. And you can look through and you may not be able to say what it is, but you're like, I see this like consistency through here.
Yep.
And I feel like the struggle for a producer, especially with like independent artists and singer-songwriters types, is trying to go in and create something that kind of doesn't have your signature anymore, but you're figuring out what their signature is.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
Yeah, it's putting yourself in someone else's shoes for an entire album.
Yeah.
or, demo or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that just to like go back on what I said before, it's so much more difficult when you have an unlimited selection of sounds.
Yeah.
Like when you're dealing with a band, you've got electric guitar, bass, keys, what other auxiliary instruments you might have.
Yeah.
When you're a producer for pop, I mean, they're literally just doing everything.
Yeah.
You can have vocal chops, you can have sirens, you can have 808s, you can have acoustic bass, you can have what are those like party synth? What are those called? Like the party synths? I forget. You know what I'm talking about? Like the big full ones.
Yeah.
That are like semi out of tune.
Yeah.
Like you hear those all. You can have the wub wub. You can have like.
Yeah.
You can do whatever you want. You can make it sparse. You can make it full. You can make it aggressive. You can make it soft. And so like, when you're producing a band that already has their sound, you're just tweaking that, right? You're helping them. When you're producing them, you're helping rewrite the song. You're helping rewrite a melody so that it fits better, or rewrite a lyric that isn't quite as good. But when you're producing pop, you're doing all of that, and then you're also saying, okay, I have to select from an infinite amount of sounds at my disposal, and choose like maybe 5 to 100,000 of those sounds to go in this song,
right,
at a specific time and a specific point.
It's like I've definitely felt that it's more challenging working with an independent artist, but I'm kind of always up for the challenge. Like, let me create something that's different than I've done before, but like when they hear it, they're like, oh my gosh, this is me. Yeah. Like that just like jazzes me. I'm like, I'm excited for that. So like we'll start the process and I'm like, all right, send me some songs that you really connect with. And I just listen to those artists for a little bit and I'm like, okay, this is what they're doing. This is the vibe. And like, I don't know, that whole process, it's a lot more work, but I love it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a ton of work. It's really exciting for me on the front end. To say like, oh yeah, this is an awesome vision. Like I want to work with you in it. And sometimes, if you're a really good producer or you just happen to get lucky, you can vibe with that person right off the bat. More times than not, though, I feel like it's kind of a struggle in the beginning or even through the entire record to figure out that sound.
Yeah.
Have you had experiences with that?
Yeah, I think creating something cohesive is always a little bit of a struggle. I feel like the times I've had a song that just lands and I don't run into a moment where I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. It feels like a fluke. It feels like I just stumbled into something great. Definitely. Yep. And I'm like, in that moment, I'm like, I don't know why this is working, but I don't want to do anything else because I'm going to ruin it. Yes. There was a song that I recorded that it was just for a personal song, and looking back, the production was decent at best. But like the composition, it was literally just an acoustic guitar, like a kick and clap sound, and a bass. But the bass wasn't even really low at all, so it was almost undetectable. Nice. So there was very little happening, but it just worked, and it just stayed the same way through the whole song because I was like, you know what, the tone of the song, it just needs to stay there. Yeah. Then there were times looking back, I'm like, ooh, what if I had put some harmonies because I just did a single vocal. Right. But I'm pretty confident if I tried to do more things, I would have ruined it. There was something special that I found, but I feel like I just stumbled into it. Yeah. I think that's how I often feel about my own music is like, I very rarely, like when I want to do a writing session, I very rarely sit down with a vision. I feel like most of my music, and I would even, sorry to my clients, but most of the music that I produce for my clients is just from me sitting down with their demo, listening to it, and then just like, what we talked about earlier, you're just throwing stuff at a canvas, almost hoping that it sticks, hoping that the paint makes sense, right? Yeah. But then you start stripping it back and whittling away at that, and that's where you get your, where I get my final products very often. Yeah. There was a masterclass advertisement that I saw for a producer. I don't remember who it was, but I just saw the ad for the masterclass. But there's this technique that he talked about that he did, and I've only tried it a couple times. I want to do it more. But when I did use it, it completely changed the quality of the production of the track, not so much the technical mixing, but just how well everything worked together.
Sure.
And that was when he starts with a song, he sits down just with a mic and he mimics every sound he's hearing with his mouth. So like if he's hearing a sound, he'll, you know, create the beat, he'll just do a little beatboxing, and then he'll think of what do I want the bass to do, what do I want this melody to do, and he creates this soundscape with just sounds he's made with his mouth, so he doesn't lose it in that moment. And then he goes back and he
Like
uses
writes
that
over it.
Right, he writes over it.
That's
and he
cool.
uses that as like a reference. And I used that on a couple things, and
That's cool.
the things that I've used it on, I came out of it being like, this is so good, and it just all works, because I think we start with that idea, that first initial
Totally.
thought of I hear this.
Yep.
And as
It
much
can
of that,
it can get lost in a moment.
so quick. And so like as much of that as you can capture in that moment, the better that it's
Totally.
going to be, because that's the same fresh ears that other people are going to listen with.
Yeah.
Right? So whatever you can create in that first time you're hearing the song is most likely going to be what's going to stick the best, because it's going to be that reaction you have is going to be the reaction
Right.
that you can create in other people.
Totally. Yeah, I've like on the opposite side of that, I've even had it where I have a melody in mind, and as I'm trying to track it, it'll change midway through. Like I don't know how, like that. I'm sure that's happened to you as well. But I'll literally be working on something that I thought was great, and then I will pause to fix something else, or to, you know, turn the bass down in my ears or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'll go back to it and I'll be like, I completely forgot the melody, or I completely forgot the rhythm that I was going with.
Right.
And then the other thing on top of that is like, or even like when you're trying to come up with it, and then you know, it's not the sound that you want. So you're like, well, obviously it's the sound, it's not the melody, right?
Yeah.
I run into that problem too often, where I'm like, it's the sound, it's not the actual writing, it's the synth that I'm using, when in reality it's just a bad melody, you know?
Yeah. Have you ever kind of followed a train where you're building the song, you started with the demo, you come up with some ideas, you start tracking it, you start, you know, trying to chop it up, add some things, and you go back to the demo and you feel like what was there was just so much more fresh than what you're working with right now, and it's almost like you get re-inspired? You ever had that happen?
The way that I write music is actually I've bypassed the demo phase completely. Because I'm personally not a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Style, like I write heavy metal still, and I write like I do beats and stuff like that. And so like I never think of my music as reaching a demo stage. Like I guess I could consider the demo stage where guitars and bass are tracked and drums are programmed, because I obviously don't have room for a drum set in my tiny apartment.
Really?
No, no. And also the neighbors would hate it. But like when I get to that stage, you could consider it a demo, but there's always less energy, because I'm generally writing as I'm learning the song that I'm writing. So in my head, when I track the thing for real, and I get it very, you know, and I practice my parts, and I get everything to the place where it sounds, I very rarely look back on the demo and go, that was not what I envisioned. You know, this has the final product always has more energy, always has more smoothness, more rhythmic elements. But that's just a product of the way that I write.
Sure.
When I'm dealing with a client, though, I've definitely listened to their demos, and I go, honestly, like, why are you making me produce this? Like, I would rather have you just release this demo, because it's just like, I had a client, her name was Julie Marie on Spotify, Tidal, you know, anywhere. Should check her out. She does very like nature inspired stuff. So like she'll talk about like trees and nature, and she's got an album that's coming out. I think that she's aiming for sometime this fall. And her vision is fantastic with it, and I've listened through her demos, and I just go, honestly, there really isn't much that I can do that she isn't already doing in the demos.
Yeah.
What I would rather do, rather than make that music like perfect and flawless, is I want her voice to come out. I want her guitar to come out. I want it to sound like she's singing on a couch in her living room to her family, you know, to her, like her husband and her parents, like that sort of vibe. Because that's what that is about, you know, that's her music. And so I know that she is tracking that project herself right now.
I've actually talked to her about coming into the studio because she goes to my church.
Oh, really?
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's dope.
I actually also think we should have her on the podcast.
Oh, that'd be cool.
But
You're talking Betcher, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Sweet.
We
Married
might
to
steal
Andy.
her from you.
What's that?
I said we might steal her from you.
That's okay.
It's okay.
That's okay.
No, she's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, so she's just got such an awesome sound, and you know, honestly, there were I've worked with her before, and I produced some of her last stuff.
Yeah.
And even that one, like, that's what I was trying to emulate. You know, having her sit on a couch, play guitar, and even that, like we were talking about, the smallest details matter. Like, I just felt like there was way too much compression in the work that I did before with her. And so that even just pulled me outside of that.
Yeah.
There was not enough dynamic. And of course, I've grown a lot since we worked together. It's been a couple years now. But that's another example of, like, you really have to make sure that the vibe is working for that artist. Make them unique, make them special. In many cases, the thing that makes the artist special is their voice. You know, you don't need to throw in a bunch of stuff to make the music special. You just let the artist be the artist.
Yeah.
And that's a trap that I get caught in all the time as a producer.
Yeah. And that's interesting because that's where you step into the world of, like, beyond music and into, like, art.
Yeah.
Right. And
Totally.
the idea is this is bigger than let's make something that sounds good, especially since it's safe to say neither one of us are producers that are in the world of let's make the next, like, hit single.
No,
you know,
absolutely not.
it's not what sells, it's what honors the music.
Yeah.
And
totally.
sometimes those are the same thing, but a lot of times are not.
Right.
And it's cool to think, you know, what one person might hear as, oh, they just got lazy and put a mic in a room. We're like, no, this is truer to the music and to the person. And so that's what we're going to do to honor it.
Yeah,
Like, there's just
totally.
something beautiful about that. And that shows intentionality beyond just the sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've gotten caught in the trap too many times. Honestly, that's the biggest killer of my own personal project, is it needs to sound perfect. Like, I'm a great guitar player, and I'm a really good producer when it comes, and a good writer when it comes to the music that I write.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm very good at it. But the thing that gets me at all times is, oh, it's not good enough. There's not an element here. There's, you know, that guitar section isn't tight enough. Like, the mix isn't glued enough. There's no way to tell when you're, like, ending a project, right?
Yeah.
The only end that you can definitively give a project is when you're like, okay, my hands are off. Like, I don't like the way certain parts sound, but I'm going to move on with my life. Like, I'm going to release it. If people enjoy it, that's great. If they don't, that's fine too.
Or it ends when they run out of money.
Yes. Or when you run out of money. If you're working at a studio and they sap you dry,
Which,
you know,
that,
which is our goal as a studio, really, honestly.
yeah.
No, that's not true.
It's not at all true.
That's not
true.
not true.
But
As a home studio recording artist, you know, the most important thing is just to enjoy it. Like, I've been in a creative slump for probably 2 or 3 years with my own personal music. And in those moments, in this time, I found pockets of time where I feel creative energy. And so I will go for months without writing a song. And then sometimes within these months, I'll get a song out in 2 days. And I released one last year. And that was a 2-day writing, recording, and then I spent about a week mixing it, and now it's on Spotify.
yeah.
Other songs, you know, I've been working on since the beginning of the year. Like, I've got a song that I'm on mix 15 with, and it doesn't even have vocals yet, and it needs vocals very badly.
Yeah.
But that song is like, it sounds great. I'm working on making the instruments tighter, making them sound better, wider, fuller, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
but like I'm doing that in the midst of my creative slump. So like it's difficult, but it's also really good when I find, even a 1% improvement in there.
Yeah.
Because that's what music is. It's all about calibrating the difference between a finished project and a perfect project.
Yeah.
Right? Like if it's a perfect project, then it's probably not art in a sense, right? Because art is never perfect. Art always has its flaws, which is why it's art. It's human.
Yeah.
And human nature is in itself not perfect. So calibrating that, like, okay, it's not perfect, but it's done sort of mentality is huge for, just producing things, just writing music, having fun with it.
Yeah.
Writing music has been one of the greatest joys in my life, and it's also been one of the greatest stressors and one of my greatest reasons for depression and anxiety when I don't feel like I'm living up to my own standard.
Yeah.
And you just, if you don't want to write music, you don't do it. If you're going to kill yourself, why are you writing music? Don't feel like you have to. If you want to, do it as much as you can, right? Because you're feeling it. Yeah. Do it when you're feeling it. Don't do it when you're not feeling it. It's in an artist's nature to be kind of bipolar in that sense. Like I don't think I know an artist that hasn't had, a few weeks, few months, maybe even a few years of just burnout.
Yeah.
And they're just down about it, right?
That's the nature of creative work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a battle,
Right.
And
it's a lot about hating your own work. Like a lot of artists that I talk to, they're proud of some of their stuff, but other stuff that I actually like of theirs, they're like, no, I hate that.
Yeah.
But they released it, and that's the point. Other people can see it as beautiful.
And I think that's why creative people need each other.
Yeah.
Right? Because people can see things and beauty in the flaws that we just see as flaws. I think that's something really special.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're out of time, but before we quit, I just wanted to affirm some things in you.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Creative slumps happen, and
oh yeah.
But I know you well. You're gonna get out of it, and the cool thing about creative slumps is when you come out of it, you usually have creativity birthed out of the story of the slump.
Yep.
And so it's the highs and lows. That's the journey of life.
Yep.
And you're gonna get it.
Funny enough, I'm really trying to start a project that's based around me not having creativity. But the irony of that is that I don't have any creativity to start that project. So stay tuned. The new song will be coming out about me not having creativity, but I haven't created it yet because
I'm excited.
Don't have that creativity to start it right now.
It'll be there in time.
Yeah, it'll be there in time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show. I enjoy it. I'm enjoying talking with you always.
Always.
Yeah.
And forever.
Instagram handles, all that stuff. Where can people reach you?
Oh, yeah. Where can people reach you?
Gosh, that's a great question. So I'm very bad with social media, but I do post things when they happen. Like as I said, I'm very far in between my creative projects, and I don't have a lot of filler in between that, just because I want to save all of my creativity and all my posts for things that matter. And so you can follow me at Nathan Arthur Music, which is my music page. Nathan Arthur Production, which is my producer's page. Both of those are on Facebook, and then on Instagram I'm at Nathan Arthur Production and at Nathan Arthur Photo.
Very nice.
So
sweet. All right. Well, thanks again, Nathaniel, and I will be talking to you sometime again.
Sometime.
Yeah, it's been great.
Okay, bye.
Cheers.
Product placement.